My name is Chloe, and if you met me 2 years ago, you would have seen a young woman wrapped in the intoxicating fragrance of love and the promise of forever. My husband, Matt, and I exchanged our vows under a flower-laden arch in the middle of a garden that looked like it had been plucked straight from a fairy tale. Our friends and family, ranging from my partners at the police force to Matt's colleagues in marketing, were present, their faces glowing with genuine happiness for us. Matt looked dashing in his dark tuxedo, eyes glistening as I walked down the aisle. The moment was so captivating, so perfect, that I nearly forgot about the somewhat icy gaze of my soon-to-be mother-in-law, Karen. She sat in the front row, wearing an outfit that was ostentatious even for her high standards. "You look stunning," Matt whispered as I reached the altar, pulling me back to the moment. "Only because I'm standing next to you," I whispered back, my eyes locked onto his, feeling the world melt away. The ceremony proceeded without a hitch. Our vows were heartfelt and genuine. Matt pledged to stand by me through all the traffic stops and night shifts, adding a dash of humor that elicited chuckles from the audience. I promised to support him through every business meeting or marketing pitch, a testament to our commitment to intertwining our seemingly disparate lives. However, the moment that really stuck with me was right after we were proclaimed husband and wife. As we stepped down from the altar, grinning like two kids who had just gotten away with stealing cookies, I caught Karen's eyes. Her expression was inscrutable, but she nodded, almost as if acknowledging that I was officially part of the family now, whether she liked it or not. "How do you feel, Mrs. Thompson?" Matt asked as we were whisked away in our wedding car, a classic Rolls-Royce we had rented for the occasion. "Indescribably happy, but also a bit curious," I admitted. "Curious? About what?" "Your mom." I couldn't quite read her expression during the ceremony. Matt chuckled. "Don't worry about her. She's a tough cookie, but she'll come around. Right now, it's just you and me." And he was right. In that moment, it was just us, cocooned in our happiness, eager to start this new chapter. Everything felt like it had fallen into place. As for Karen, well, she was like that one puzzle piece that you force into the gap, hoping it'll eventually fit. For the sake of our new marriage, I was willing to work on it, to push and prod until it sat snugly with the rest of the picture. You know how they say that not all that glitters is gold. Our wedding was the shimmering prelude to a narrative that neither Matt nor I had seen coming, a narrative that included whispered secrets, concealed affairs, and ultimately, an unraveling of the lives we had so carefully built. At that moment, though, as the car pulled away, scattering the crowd of well-wishers in our wake, none of that mattered. We were young, in love, and filled with hope. We had no idea what trials were waiting just around the corner, but we clung to each other, our hearts beating in sync as if daring the universe to do its worst. And so, the journey began. Little did we know, it was a journey that would test not just our love, but also our very understanding of family, commitment, and the painful complexities that sometimes come with saying "I do." 2 years into our marriage, Matt and I had settled into a comfortable routine. We'd had our arguments and disagreements, as any couple does, but we had also carved out a little haven for ourselves in our 2-bedroom apartment. Paintings we picked out together adorned the walls, and the furniture bore silent witness to numerous movie nights and lazy Sundays. The aura of our home reflected our relationship, mostly harmonious with just a dash of chaos. Then, on a nondescript Tuesday afternoon, the air in our sanctuary thickened with a sense of anticipation, and not the pleasant kind. My phone buzzed with a text message from Matt. "Mom's stopping by this afternoon, just a heads up." I sighed. Karen's visits were always a bag of mixed emotions, decorum peppered with subtle jabs and concealed judgments. She wasn't a terrible person. She was just hard to please and even harder to understand. By the time she arrived, Matt and I had made our best efforts to present a picturesque home. The coffee table was adorned with a vase of fresh flowers, and the aroma of freshly baked cookies wafted through the air. Karen stepped through the door, her heels clicking authoritatively against the hardwood floor. Dressed in a meticulously tailored suit, she looked like she was attending a board meeting rather than a casual visit. "Ah, Karen-welcome," Matt greeted, stepping forward to give his mom a hug. "Matthew, the place looks different," Karen observed, her eyes scanning our living space with surgical precision. "It's good to see you, Karen," I chimed in, offering a polite smile. "Chloe, how lovely," she replied, the corners of her mouth twitching into what might be considered a smile in some parallel universe. "So this is where you both hide away. Would you like some coffee or tea?" I offered, desperate to fill the void of uncomfortable silence. "Coffee," 2 sugars, she replied, finally taking a seat. As Matt left for the kitchen to prepare the drinks, I tried to strike up a conversation. Work has been going well for Matt. He's been really making strides in his marketing career. Yes, well, you need a good job to maintain a home, Karen said, shooting another look around the apartment as if hoping the furniture would confirm her opinions. Just then, Matt returned with a tray of coffee and cookies, placing it on the table before sitting next to me. So, Mom, what brings you here today? Oh, can't a mother visit her only son without an agenda, she retorted, adding sugar to her coffee. We're always happy to see you, Matt said, not missing a beat. We just want to make sure everything is okay. Everything is perfectly fine, Karen replied, sipping her coffee delicately. Just here to catch up. We all fell into an uneasy silence, interrupted only by the clinking of our coffee cups and the occasional forced laughter at some trivial joke. I could feel the tension hanging thick in the room, like an invisible curtain separating me from the world I had married into. We talked, but the words seemed empty, filled only with the intention of keeping a conversation, any conversation, going. It was in this atmosphere of strained cordiality that Matt's phone buzzed. I have to take this. It's from work, he announced, excusing himself and heading to the bedroom to take the call. And then it was just Karen and me, alone in the echoing silence of our mixed emotions and half-truths. I looked at her, she looked at me, and we both knew that the conversation was about to take a turn. Little did I know then just how sharp that turn would be. This was the moment that would lead to revelations and decisions that neither of us had foreseen. But for now, we sat there, sipping our coffee, both aware that this visit was about more than just catching up. It was a preamble to a storm that had been brewing, quietly but steadily, in the undercurrents of our seemingly calm lives. Karen and I sat in a silence so thick it was almost palpable, a fragile truce maintained only by the occasional sip of coffee or the forced rustling of a newspaper. Despite our history of strained interactions, I decided to make a genuine effort to connect. With Matt out of the room, it felt like a convenient, albeit risky, opportunity to forge some kind of bond with her. So, Karen, Matt told me you've been doing some traveling recently, I ventured. Oh yes, a cruise through the Mediterranean. It's delightful. You should try it sometime, given your busy schedule, she said, the pause long enough to imply that a career in law enforcement was somehow less worthy of free time. That sounds lovely. Speaking of work, I've actually been on the force for a year now. It's been challenging but rewarding, I shared, hopeful that this might resonate with her in some way. The air in the room changed. Karen's posture stiffened, her eyes narrowed, and it felt as though the temperature had suddenly dropped a few degrees. I see. A year, you say, she queried, her voice devoid of any warmth it might have previously held. Yes, I've been really committed to it, I replied, now growing concerned at her visible change in demeanor. Karen put her coffee cup down, clasped her hands together, and looked at me as though I was an equation she was trying to solve, but just couldn't. Finally, she spoke, and when she did, her words sliced through the air like a blade. Chloe, I think it's best if you leave this house. And I think it's best if you never see Matt again. He's been cheating on you for a year now, she stated, her eyes unflinching. The room began to spin, and I felt as if the ground had been pulled out from beneath me. My ears buzzed and my vision blurred. The woman who had never approved of me was now telling me that my husband, her son, had betrayed me. And she told me this with such casual cruelty, as though she was commenting on the weather. What are you talking about? I stuttered, my voice barely rising above a whisper. Exactly what I said. He's been seeing another woman. I thought you deserved to know, she replied, coldly clinical. Deserved to know? Or is this some sort of twisted pleasure for you? I snapped, my disbelief turning to anger. Karen sighed, a theatrical display of emotion. Believe what you want, Chloe. The truth remains the truth. The door opened, and Matt walked back in, blissfully unaware of the emotional battlefield he was stepping into. Sorry about that. Where were we? Actually, Matt, I said, my voice trembling with emotion I couldn't quite keep in check. I think it's time for me to go. He looked at me, puzzled, then at his mother, who returned his gaze with stoic impassiveness. Are you okay, Chloe? I shook my head, holding back the tears that were now demanding to fall. No, I'm not, but I will be. As I left our home, my sanctuary turned prison. I felt a crushing weight on my shoulders. The drive to my brother's house was a blur, the city lights streaking past me as though even they were attempting to escape the gravity of what had just unfolded. And one afternoon, my marriage, my life, and my understanding of family had all come undone, unraveled by a revelation that left me questioning everything I thought I knew. My heart was broken, Yes, but it was also aflame with a fury and resolve I hadn't felt before. Karen had initiated this war, and if it was war she wanted, it was war she would get. As I rang my brother's doorbell, my mind was already racing ahead, plotting and planning. For in that moment, I knew that the battle for my dignity, my happiness, and my future had only just begun. My brother Jack answered the door, his eyes widening as he took in my disheveled appearance, my face a canvas of raw emotion, makeup smeared, hair frayed from 1,000 anxious strokes of my fingers. "Chloe, what happened?" He ushered me inside, the concern in his eyes immediately turning to alarm. "Can we talk?" was all I could manage before I collapsed onto his worn-out couch, a relic from our college days that he'd never gotten around to replacing. Jack grabbed 2 beers from the fridge and sat beside me. "All right, spill it. You look like you've been through hell." As I began recounting the afternoon's events, starting from Karen's icy arrival to the soul-shattering revelation, the words poured out like water breaching a dam. Jack listened intently, not interrupting, his eyes narrowing at key moments. "So, she just blurted it out, just like that?" he finally asked. "Yes, Jack." She didn't hesitate, didn't waver. She just threw it out there like she was commenting on the damn weather. I said, my voice tinged with bitterness. "That's messed up, Chloe. Really messed up," he muttered, rubbing his forehead as if trying to absorb the magnitude of it all. I sighed, taking a sip from my beer. "I know. And the worst part is, I don't know what to believe. Could Matt really do that to me? And if so, why? And if not, why would his own mother say something so devastating?" Jack shook his head. "Look, sis, Matt has some explaining to do. And so does his mom. But for now, you need a place to stay, and you're more than welcome here." "Thanks, Jack. I can't go back there." "Not now, not like this," I said, my eyes misting over again. "Hey, you don't have to explain yourself to me. We're family. This is what we do," he said, reaching over to give me a reassuring pat on the back. And so, I settled into a new routine, in a place that was both familiar and foreign. Jack's apartment became my refuge, a place where I could plot my next steps without the weight of a failed marriage hanging over my head. In this space, I reconnected with a part of myself that I had lost, or maybe had never truly known. I threw myself into work, the structure and discipline of the police force, providing a stability that my personal life lacked. I reconnected with old friends, people who reminded me of who I was before Matt and his mother turned my life upside down. At the precinct, my focus sharpened. I found satisfaction in solving cases that seemed complex and tangled, perhaps mirroring the intricacies of my own emotional state. My colleagues began to notice, commending me on a job well done. But in the back of my mind, I was preparing for a different sort of case, one that was deeply personal and yet so utterly universal: how to regain one's dignity and happiness in the face of betrayal. I consulted lawyers discreetly, learning about the ins and outs of divorce laws and property rights. I reconnected with some of my contacts within the police force, leaning into my network for the first time in a long while. As the weeks unfolded, my plan began to crystallize. I felt empowered, not just by the prospect of justice, but also by the idea of taking control of my own narrative. Jack was my confidant throughout, offering advice when I sought it, a listening ear when I needed it, and space when I required solitude. It was during these weeks at his apartment that I came to realize homes are not just built out of bricks and mortar, but also out of love, trust, and shared struggle. I was ready to face Matt, ready to redefine the terms of my own life. But just as I was about to take that irrevocable step, my phone buzzed. A call from Karen, and once again, my plans were thrown into disarray, this time by the very woman who had set this all into motion. The storm wasn't over. It was merely the eye, and I braced myself for what would come next. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, the caller ID displaying the one name I never thought I'd want to see again. Karen! My finger hovered over the decline button, but something stopped me. Was it curiosity? The hunger for closure? Or maybe, just maybe, a tiny glimmer of hope that this could all be some twisted misunderstanding? "Hello," I answered cautiously. "Chloe, can we talk? I need to see you," she stammered, her voice tinged with desperation, a stark contrast to the steely demeanor she'd had during our last encounter. "I have nothing to say to you, Karen. You've done enough," I replied, my words icy. "Please, Chloe, this is important. Can we meet at the park? You know, the one where you and Matt took your engagement photos." "Why there? Hoping to twist the knife a little more?" "No, I have something to tell you. Something I think you need to hear." And so, I found myself sitting on a bench at Oakwood Park, every tree and walking path a painful reminder of happier times. Karen appeared, her face flushed as if she'd been crying. She sat next to me but kept some distance, as though afraid to encroach upon my emotional space. "Chloe, thank you for coming. I know you have no reason to trust me," she began. "You're right, I don't. So what's so important?" I shot back. She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Matt kicked me out. He told me it was unacceptable, what I did to you, telling you about his affair. Your point being?" "My point is, I never expected him to do that. I thought he would understand why I had to tell you." "Understand? You destroyed your own son's marriage, and you thought he'd understand." "I destroyed it. I think he did a pretty good job of that himself," she countered, her voice rising slightly. I paused, contemplating her words. "Karen, what do you want from me?" Tears began to flow down her cheeks. "I was wrong, Chloe. Maybe not in telling you, but in how I've treated you from the beginning. I thought if you left him, he would come back to me, that I'd be the most important woman in his life again. But instead, he's more alone than ever, and it's my fault. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. So, this is a pity party? You want me to feel bad for you?" I questioned, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. "No, I don't deserve your pity. I just want you to know that I regret what I've done. Maybe not the revelation, but the intention behind it. It was cruel, and it's cost me my family. It was my turn to hesitate now. Karen, whether you regret it or not changes nothing for me. My marriage is over, and I have to rebuild, alone. I know. I just had to tell you, had to let you know that I understand the gravity of what I've done. And if there's any way I can make amends." "Amends," I cut her off. "Karen, some things can't be undone." She nodded, wiping away her tears. "You're right. I guess I'm learning that the hard way now." I stood up, my whole body tense. I should go. There's nothing left to say. As I walked away, I felt Karen's eyes on me, heavy with a sorrow that I suspected was as much for herself as it was for me. I didn't look back, but as I left the park, her words echoed in my mind, a swirling mix of regret, revelation, and the unmistakable finality of a chapter closing. I felt neither joy nor vindication, just a profound sadness at the brokenness of it all. Two women bound by a man neither could truly have, each a victim and a perpetrator in her own right. When I got back to Jack's apartment, I dialed Matt's number. It was time to divide the property, to sever the last remaining threads of our shared life. But as the phone rang, I realized that this was not the end, but a beginning. A fresh start carved from the wreckage of betrayal and regret. When Matt answered, I took a deep breath. "We need to talk." But unlike the last time I uttered those words, I was ready. Ready to face whatever came my way, armed with the painful wisdom that sometimes, even the most tangled webs can be unraveled if you're willing to cut right through them. Retribution, they call it in the legal system, a way to restore balance to a world upset by crime or moral failure. I never imagined myself on this side of the equation, filing the papers, invoking my rights as a wronged spouse. But here I was, sitting across from my lawyer, meticulously planning how to take half of what was ours, but had suddenly become his. "Chloe, you have a strong case here. Infidelity is grounds for divorce in this state, and your tenure in the police force will lend credibility to your claim," my lawyer, Sarah, advised, shuffling through the mound of paperwork on her desk. "Do you think Matt will fight me on this?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Given the evidence and his mother's confession, I doubt it. However, you should prepare for any outcome. You never really know someone until you see them in court, she said, locking eyes with me. Sarah was a family friend and a legal expert who had navigated the treacherous waters of divorce settlements more times than she cared to admit. Her experience was comforting, yet her words were cautionary. I received a text from an unknown number as I left the attorney's office. "Can we talk? Just once before all this gets messy." His message caught me off guard. I felt a pang of nostalgia, remembering the man I thought I'd spend my life with. But that was an illusion, shattered now, replaced by a stranger with the same face. "No," I replied. "See you in court." It was a grueling process, more so because of the emotional weight than the legal complexities. Thanks to Sarah and some connections I had at the police department, the scales tilted in my favor. The judge awarded me half of the shared property, validating my claim for emotional distress caused by Matt's infidelity. Matt looked defeated as the verdict was read out, but not remorseful, a subtle but important distinction that did not go unnoticed. The proceedings took a toll on him, but unlike me, he didn't have the support system to lean on. His mother, Karen was conspicuously absent, making the courtroom an arena of loneliness for him. As I walked out of the courtroom, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Karen. I heard the verdict. "If it's not too late, can we talk?" A whirlwind of emotions surged within me. Anger, satisfaction, but also a strange, unfounded sense of guilt. Maybe she deserved to know what I planned to do next, or maybe I needed her to know. We met at a nondescript cafe, far removed from the realms of our intertwined lives. "Congratulations," Karen said, her voice tinged with something I couldn't quite place. "No one wins in situations like this, Karen," I replied, sipping my coffee. "I suppose you're right. So, what will you do now?" "I've decided to give you back the house," I said, catching her completely off guard. "You may not have a son to live with you, but you'll have a roof over your head." "Why?" she asked, puzzled and perhaps a bit skeptical of my intentions. "Because I can. Because it's the right thing to do. And because, whether I like it or not, you gave me the truth when you didn't have to." Tears filled Karen's eyes as she nodded. "Thank you, Chloe." "Don't thank me. Just take it as an opportunity to rebuild whatever life you can. An opportunity both of us need." As I walked away, I realized that retribution wasn't merely punitive. It also held the potential for restoration. Not the piecing together of shattered relationships. That was beyond the realm of possibility now, but the construction of new, hopefully healthier dynamics. Karen got her house back, and maybe a sliver of redemption. I reclaimed my dignity, my fair share, and my freedom. Matt, he got the solitude he may not have wanted, but perhaps what he deserved.